Ciao e bentornati, welcome back to PILLOLE D'ITALIANO. In today's episode number 65, I think that we should finally talk about the big elephant in the room. And no, I'm not saying that we should talk about my t-shirt today. I think that we should address the real big elephant in the room, those pronominal verbs. A lot of people stumble upon them, they're used a lot in everyday conversations. So the two main issues that people that are learning Italian have with pronominal verbs are, well, how to identify and understand the meaning and how to behave and how to conjugate them, what to do with them when you encounter one. Before we tackle those issues, I want to make sure that we all understand what pronominal verbs are. What am I referring to? I'm talking about those verbs that are accompanied by two pronouns. Some pronominal verbs might only have one pronoun, but today I want to tackle the beast, the most difficult one. So we're only going to look at a few, not all of them, a few verbs that come with double pronouns. And what are pronouns? You heard me talk about some of them: lo, la, ne, ci, mi, ti. Those are all pronouns. So sometimes in pronominal verbs, you will see the use of reflexive pronouns, and that adds a little bit of an element of complication. We're going to see it in a second. But there are also some pronouns that do not have any reflexive element to it. I'm thinking about mettercela, when you have mettere plus ce plus la. Neither ce nor la are reflexive pronouns. And this basically means that you don't have to worry about changing those pronouns as you're conjugating the verb. So a bit easier in that respect. Okay, before we jump into the conjugation and what to do and how to behave when we encounter one, how do we deal with the meaning? You might have noticed with verbs such as andarsene that it doesn't really make sense to translate each piece, each component of that verb to get to the actual meaning. Though I usually encourage some usage of your own native English language as support to learn Italian, to create those bridges between a language that you already know and the language that you're studying. In this specific case, I will strongly discourage you from trying and do that. So don't look at andarsene and try to think, oh, it's to go oneself about it. That will not lead you to the solution. The best thing you could do with pronominal verbs is to understand how natives use them, accept the idiomatic nature of those verbs, really accept the meaning. So andarsene, for example, means to go away. Don't try and translate the se and the ne as separate things. Once you find andarsene, just connect it with the full meaning of to go away without breaking it up in several chunks. That's my best advice. Accept them, don't try to overanalyze them. It's a bit like the work of an artist in a sense, right? Don't try and understand why did they put that little orange line there and a yellow dot there. Take a step back and appreciate them in their own entirety. With that being said, let's have a look at how to use them, how to conjugate them. I know that a lot of people are really frightened by pronominal verbs and reflexive verbs too. You guys might not really know what to do. You don't feel confident. You think that you have to learn a whole new conjugation. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's actually easier than you were led to think. Have you ever heard that advice that when you're scared about doing something in front of people, such as public speaking, you should imagine them all naked or just, in their underwear, so they become laughable and ridiculous, and you do understand that they're just like you. They're not better, they're not intimidating anymore. So what I want to do today here with you is really get to the naked verb that you will find inside every single pronominal verb. I want you to feel confident about recognizing that verb, that naked verb, seeing that it's not that daunting, that it's probably a verb that you already know and that you already know how to conjugate, and we'll take it from there. As I said, today we are going to see only a few pronominal verbs because there are so many. I personally selected 8. We're going to focus on these. They're kind of, useful and fairly commonly used. So hopefully you like my selection. And then in case you were to find more verbs, feel free to use the comment section below, share them with me and with the community so that we can all learn together. Let's start with andarsene. Andarsene, that I mentioned before, means to go away. Andarsene, when you conjugate it, you have to think, you have to clearly see that it's just andare plus si plus ne. Andare plus si plus ne. A thing that happens to a lot of pronouns, such as si in this case, is that when they're followed by a second pronoun, the I, the letter I, opens into an e, the letter I. This happens to ease the pronunciation. When you have andare plus si plus ne, the verb andarsene, it's a bit more difficult to pronounce than andarsene. If I open the si, the I, into an e, it's easier. You can try it, actually. Try and say andarsene. You see how you have to smile for that si part? And try and say andarsene. Sene. It's more relaxed. So it's less work for your muscles, for your cheeks. That's the reason why a lot of these pronouns open up when they're followed by another one, to ease the pronunciation. All right, so now that you know that the naked verb in andarsene is andare, if you want to say I go away, andare becomes vado, I go. And you have to remember that andarsene, that si is just the generic, it stands for oneself. So once you conjugate it, you have to change that si into me, because you're talking about yourself, you're the one who's going away. So it becomes me ne vado. As I mentioned before, mine actually opens into me ne vado. So the things to keep in mind here with a verb like andarsene. First, you look at the naked verb. You conjugate that verb by itself. And then whatever pronouns follow, once you conjugate a verb, a pronominal verb, you have to put them before. So that's the second thing to keep in mind. Okay, now that I conjugated the naked verb, I'm going to move before the verb my pronouns. And if one of those pronouns is a reflexive pronoun, like it happens here, I have to create accordance with the subject. So if I am the one who is going away, I have to say me ne vado. If you are the one who is going away, I would say te ne vai, te ne vai. Vai is the two-person, the second person singular of the verb andare. So basically what I'm doing is that I'm focusing on the verb, conjugating for the right person, moving the pronouns in front of the verb, and if I need to change one of those pronouns because it's a reflexive one, I need to make it personal for the person that I'm conjugating the verb for. Me ne vado, te ne vai. Hopefully this is not too complicated, or it starts making sense. I really hope so. Andarsene, it's kind of a complex case because, as I said, you have this third layer of complication of having to use a reflexive pronoun among those that follow the verb andare. That se stands for a reflexive pronoun, so that's why I have to work with it. There are some other verbs where you don't have to worry about adjusting it, and I'm going to give you an example of those right away. Farcela, farcela. That means to manage to do something. Okay, let's start by looking at the naked verb in here, farcela. It's the verb fare, fare. So that's the one that you have to conjugate. And when it comes to cela, that will be ci plus la, but ci opens into ce. Those are not reflexive pronouns, so you don't have to deal with those. You just move them in front of the verb once you conjugate it. So let's start from the naked verb fare. How do you say I? What's the io person of that verb fare? Faccio, faccio. And now move cela in front, and you have ce la faccio, ce la faccio. And if I want to ask you, a friend, if you are managing whatever activity you're tackling right now, I just want to make sure that you don't need help. So now I'm conjugating that fare, the naked verb for tu, you. That will be fai, fai. And cela goes before the verb and it doesn't change. So ce la fai. Actually, this is a question. Ce la fai? Ce la fai? Say that you're carrying a heavy box. I want to make sure that you don't need help. I will ask you, ce la fai? Is this making sense? Hopefully. Use a comment section below, communicate with me, because I know that this is like a big topic, and if I need to re-explain some stuff, finding a different angle, I'm more than happy to. So let me know. So far we've seen a verb such as andarsene with that C, the reflexive, and then a verb like farcella where you don't have to worry about changing those pronouns. I'm going to throw at you a third pronominal verb right now. Ready? Cavarcella. Cavarcella. That means to successfully get yourself out of a situation, like a difficult situation. Cavarcella. Are you hearing this cella at the end? That's a hint for you. We have a reflexive pronoun here, so like in andarsene, I will have to take care of that, okay? Now, what's a naked verb? That's the first question you gotta ask yourself. Cavare. Cavare, it's a regular adverb, so that should be easy for you to conjugate. For io is cavo, cavo. And sela needs to go before the verb, but se changes into me. Me la cavo, me la cavo. Me la cavo means I successfully get out of the situation. If I am talking about someone else, what would I do? So from the verb cavare, if it's a he or she, you go into a, cava, and the reflexive pronoun for he or she, himself or herself, is se. So se la cava, se la cava. For example, I could say, Giulia se la cava bene a scuola. Giulia se la cava bene a scuola. That basically means that Giulia is good at school, is successful at school, gets herself out of those tricky situations at school successfully, maybe, you know, passing, acing all her tests. That's the concept of cavarcella, cavarcella bene. Let's move on to volercene. Volercene means to require a great deal of time, effort, commitment to do something. So if I say, ce ne vuole per imparare bene una lingua. Ce ne vuole per imparare bene una lingua. I'm saying that per imparare bene, in order to learn well una lingua, a language, ce ne vuole. It takes time, effort. That's basically what it means, right? Ce ne vuole. It requires a big deal of that resource. Have you ever heard of sentirsela? Sentirsela means to be willing to do something or to feel like doing something. If you don't feel like hanging out with a friend and you want to call that person and tell them in Italian, I don't feel like coming out tonight. Keep in mind that in sentirsela, the naked verb is sentire, that goes to sento. And sela, we have that reflexive again, so it becomes mela. Mela in two words, not like an apple, okay? You would say me la sento if you feel like doing something, or non me la sento. Non me la sento di uscire stasera. I don't feel like going out tonight. Have you noticed what I just did here with the negation, non? It never goes in between. So a pronominal verb and all of its components, they want to stick together. They're like a family. Don't separate them. Non goes before the verb and before all the pronouns that precede that verb. So non me la sento. This is a good expression to know, legarsela. The full expression is legarsela al dito, but sometimes people only use the pronominal verb legarsela. Literally, to tie it to oneself. Legarsela al dito, to tie it to your own finger. I guess that back in the days when people wanted to remember something, they used to maybe use a thread or tie a knot around their finger. I don't know if that was actually a thing, but what legarsela means in everyday conversation is to hold a grudge. And now if we want to analyze that verb, we see that the naked verb is legare, and sela, se once more tells me that there is a reflexive pronoun in there, so when I conjugate it, I need to change it and create accordance with the subject. So if I want to say that they hold a grudge, I would say se la legano or se la legano al dito. But if I want to talk about us, we hold a grudge, ce la leghiamo al dito. And to follow suit, I thought it was appropriate to introduce you to this other pronominal verb that is very much used, avercela. Avercela. Avercela con qualcuno. Well, that means to be mad, to be angry at someone, or actually we say with someone, avercela. Now, if I want to ask you, are you angry at me? Are you mad at me? I would use the naked verb avere, that becomes I for the to person, and ce la goes before, so ce la I. We like to run it together, drop the final a from la, put an apostrophe, and it becomes ce l'hai, ce l'hai. Ce l'hai con me? Are you angry at me? This exact expression, ce l'hai con me, could be used to inquire if somebody is talking to you. So you would just ask, ce l'hai con me? Are you talking to me? I guess that ce l'hai con me is a bit more of a colloquial way of asking, parli con me? Do you talk with me? But in an everyday, very familiar way of using the Italian language, we would say ce l'hai con me? And last but not least, today I want to introduce mettercela. Mettercela, or often mettercela tutta, means to try hard, to try really your best to achieve a certain result. Mettercela. So here, if you want to say I try my best, the naked verb is mettere. So what would you say? Ce la metto. Ce la metto tutta. Before I leave you with some homework, because I really think that this requires some work on your part. It's not an easy peasy pill to swallow. Apologies. I want to invite you to subscribe to my newsletter, because that's a way that you can get access to all the promo offers, discounts, new initiatives. You can be a part of building new projects with me. We can pick each other's brains. You can ask me questions. It's a way more flowy and natural way of communicating rather than using the comment section here below the videos, which is great when you have like a spot-on question, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a back and forth. I also just launched a brand new initiative, and I think that a lot of you might benefit from it. So come, discover it. Let's see if that's something that you might enjoy. And if that's not the case, if you don't see anything that it's right for you, let me know. Let's see if we can build something together. I'm always eager to hear if there are new ways that I can add more value to your lives. And you will find an easy way to sign up on top of each page on my website. So I will put a link in the description of this episode below. Go have a blast, explore, let me know. Alright, with that being said, what are those homeworks? The first thing I always recommend is to pay close attention to whatever you're exposed to. If you're reading an Italian book, if you're listening to a radio program or a podcast, if you're listening to Italian songs, even in the lyrics, you can find those pronominal verbs. Just become a detective. Start with taking notes. Maybe you have a little notebook, or maybe you like doing it on your phone. That's also fine. Have a running list of those with their correspective meanings. Also, feel free to leave comments in the comment section below every time you find new pronominal verbs with their meanings, if you're already aware of their meanings. This way we can all help each other. We can expand our vocabulary faster, right? Imagine having to do research all by yourself as opposed to having a team of hundreds. How faster can we actually go that way? So let's help each other. And then another thing that you could do, if you feel up to it, to get familiar with the way of conjugating and using those verbs, is to create a mock dialogue between 2 or 3 people. It doesn't really matter if the people are real or not. The point is that you should try and use as many pronominal verbs as you can, and conjugating them maybe a different person. So not always the io, not always the lei. Try and alternate a bit. So as I suggested, it could be a dialogue. It could also be a short super short story, a couple of paragraphs. Whatever comes to mind, it's fine. Use your imagination and have fun with it, of course. That's the most important component. And try and use your imagination to put together all the information that you've been acquiring. Lastly, watch this video over and over again if you need to. This topic is really dense, but once you understand how to deal with it, you can start using your logic, and at some point it will click. Maybe right now it's not clicking yet, and that's fine. You just need to go back, watch it again, ask me questions, let's sort it through together, okay? And if these pronominal verbs are driving you insane and you need to take a break, please do. There is no point in trying to push through and get through the whole lesson all in one sitting. My recommendation when you take a break is to get up, walk to a mirror, look at yourself in the reflection, and repeat these words after me. Posso farcela. Posso farcela. Because I know that you can do it. I leave it at that. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode and that these pronominal verbs are not so scary and intimidating anymore. Please don't forget to like the episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're new to it, and I will see you in a week. Ciao, a presto!